All right, sorry about that. I was having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I am here now. Um, Both in Twitch land and YouTube, can you hear me, and see my stream? I had to reconnect my OBS with a new stream key because it just wasn't starting to stream. Okay, we got Napping Ood on YouTube saying we're good to go. And I believe it looks like Twitch is working as well. Okay, awesome, fantastic. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to this week's NapKim Math. I wanted to start with something a little bit nerdy and fun, kind of like a cold open for SNL, except for nerds. I say that because I embrace nerdiness. I love being a nerd. I say that as a compliment. So if I ever call you a nerd, it's a compliment. But I something came up when I was playing Balatro a week or two ago on my phone, and I thought it would be something really cool to look at some statistics. So let me switch over to a different screen, and I have a screenshot of what happened. I opened a Jumbo Buffoon pack, and if you look at the jokers that you see, what do you notice? Any guesses? We have rental stickers on all four jokers. And when I opened the pack, I kind of stared at it, just sighed, and just said to myself, what are the odds? And we're literally going to figure out the odds of that happening. Now, according to some of the source data, getting a rental joker there's a 30% chance of opening up a pack or being in the shop and having a rental sticker on your joker. So, as we talked about last week, it doesn't have a memory of what's happening next to it, what happened before, what happened after, and so it's an independent event. And so the odds of that happening on all four, it's 30% to the power of 4. So you just multiply 30% times itself 4 times. So breaking out my handy dandy calculator, 30% is 0.3. So you just either move the decimal place 2 to the left or divide by 100 to get your decimal form of your percent. And we're going to multiply that by itself 4 times. And it says that it's 0.0081. And so to think of that in terms of an actual percentage, multiply it by 100, so it's a little bit easier to look at. And so there's a less than 1% chance of that happening. 0.81%. Basically, like 1 in 100 chance, a little less than that, but less than 1 in 100 chance, which very small odds. And so that's why when I looked at that, I was just like, really? Really? I don't like getting rentals, and that it didn't annoy me, but I was like, well, at least it'll be good for the stream. It's like I won the anti-lottery. Like Balatro pulled a gotcha, and I got 4 tax bills. Had to pay for any joker that I wanted to use. So that's kind of what I wanted to start with because I thought the odds of that happening were pretty low, but didn't realize it was less than 1%. And of course, it happened to me. So, if you all have any examples like that where you feel like something happened that was very low odds, let me know. We can take a look at it and figure out what the real odds are. Let me switch back to my video screen for a second. And then I'm going to close up my calculator. Now, I know that we have a couple things that we've been looking at. And so I think we'll go ahead and get started with some of the BigQuery looking at the SQL, and then get into the mod that I was teasing a little bit in a little bit. I want to make sure that I know some of the other streamers that sometimes come in a little bit later. And so I wanted to start with some of the BigQuery stuff to kind of get the ball rolling, and then we can look at the mod that I was developing. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to be sharing. There we go. You should be able to see the Google Sheet that we've been working with. And for those of you who are not familiar with what I've been doing with my streams, I've been playing Balatro on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to join anytime. And during that run, I jot down a couple things about the run so that I can go and analyze it later. So all of this data you see here, like the seed, what jokers got a sticker if I won, whether I won or lost, the deck, all of that. After that is done, I go back and rewatch it, usually muted because who wants to listen to me talk for hours and hours? No, I'm just kidding. It's more I don't want to hear myself talk about the same thing over and over, especially if I have to rewind and play it over again, just for some fun. Why, thank you, Napping Ood. That is my husband, so I'm glad that he says that he likes listening to me. And I do want to point out my husband is fantastic, and I really appreciate him supporting me in this endeavor. So please give props to him. He's my mod in Twitch, and he also looks at YouTube too to make sure that nothing crazy is going on. So I really appreciate him being here. He's been in every single stream, every single minute of them. So thank you so much. You are the best. Now, when I go and track some of the other stuff outside of what you see during the stream, I track the round information. So like what the blind was, what tag showed up, whether I played it, skipped it, didn't get to it because I lost before the boss blind, my round score, how much ending money I had, and the Joker effect, like Mr. Bones or Chico, to save or disable a boss blind. I also track information about hands, and I did change how I was capturing that. I initially was capturing the score of every single hand, so it wouldn't be cumulative. But then I realized that I was having to be super precise and wasting a lot of my time to do that. So once we got to run 5, I started just jotting down the cumulative score, knowing that I could get back to it later and get what I needed. But this will also allow us to figure out over time what poker hands we play the most overall, how many discards we like to use, and like the average score over different rounds or antes or anything like that. I track shop information, and that again is something that changed over time because I initially was tracking every single item that popped up in the shop, and that was not manageable. And so I have basically a key that allows me to identify which shop something was purchased in. And then if I buy a voucher, I'll note it in here and how many rerolls I have in here as well. The shop kind of key is important because for the jokers, consumables, playing cards, and poker hands, I identify what shop or hand they happen in so that I can track like maybe how long on average I keep jokers or um, when things tend to happen. Like, do I tend to fill out all my joker slots early on, or do I get one and like wait until ante 4 to really start scaling up to hopefully help me improve and help you all improve too. And I do have like some additional information, like this 8-ball was added based off of a tag, and it's a negative joker. That's what the N is denoted with. And I think this one's funny because it's like 8-balling. But I am a nerd, so some of my jokes don't land. But that helps me track jokers over time as well. I track consumables, saying like what planet card, what spectral card, what tarot card, and what they apply to. So that I can see if like I'm using the Fool on Hermit the most or Uranus. Probably depends on which game I'm playing and how I'm scaling, because those are probably the two that I use it on the most. I track playing cards when how long I have them for, and any modifications, so we can see like multi. The Z for me is a steel card. R is red seal, and that helps me track how things change, how many cards I have in my deck, and hopefully help with some analytics in the future as well. And then poker hands, that's probably the most intuitive, tracking the basically planet cards I used. On Thursday, we did end up getting a burnt joker, so I was able to track the changes from there as well. The one thing that I haven't added in here yet, and I have experienced, is decreases from the arm. And I think I have a way of doing that, but because I'm building a mod to try and automate all of this, I think I'm okay right now just leaving that out. So that's the basic data structure. And we've gone over that in our previous streams. We created a basically database in BigQuery. BigQuery is free to use to a certain point. You can bring data in, you can manipulate the data, you can query the data. And so I've shown how to do that a couple different ways. And so I'll kind of be picking up where we left off in previous streams. So I did create views for the queries that we had written last time on last Saturday to kind of see how we're progressing over time. So the first one that we created actually 2 Saturdays ago was the most common tags. So I can query that view because it's basically a saved query, and run that to get the updated list of our most common tags. And last time we did add in the percent skipped to figure out which ones we were skipping the most. And so investment, I tend to invest in myself, is still the winner with 6 skips 100% of the time. Garbage, thankfully I don't treat myself like garbage, but I have skipped it once, the one time it popped up, to get to some of that money from unused discards. And let's see, are there any that have 0? So we still have a couple that have, we haven't skipped at all to get. Double, which gives you a copy of the next tag. We haven't skipped to get that. Foil, I'll probably end up getting that when I get to the plasma deck, my favorite deck. Top up has always come at the most opportune time when my joker slots were full, so we still haven't used that yet. And voucher, I think those have been popping up at the very beginning when I don't have a lot of money, and so I haven't been buying those yet. And so we've gotten all but 4 of the tags, and tend to heavily get more of the money related, negative jokers, and even spectral packs. So not much has changed there. Let's see. Let's go into our run wins. So we have our deck, our stake, how many times we've played, and how many times we've won. And this one was pretty straightforward as well. We're going to select star to get everything back from that. And we have played our red deck twice on white stake and won once. A bunch of the other red decks, blue deck, yellow deck, we've played once and won once, so 100% of the time. And the green deck, white stake, which we played on Thursday, we played 2 times, we won 1 and we lost 1. So that's tracking there. We can always add in like percent of times won and get different granularity. So we can see for the red deck how many times we played and how many times we won instead of red deck, white stake, red deck, red stake. And we could also look at the stakes and see what stakes we have the biggest difficulty with. I can almost guarantee you the blue stake and gold stake are probably going to be the ones that pop up the most once we get more data. All right. So we can look at our run stats. Select star from that again. This makes it super easy to look at them every single week because our view keeps the query the same, our underlying data changes, and it captures all of that. So we do play 171 cards on average, discard 74 on average, purchase 68, reroll about 22 times, and have on average 30 new discoveries, which obviously the first couple games you'll have that a lot higher and the average will probably start going down. I'm going to go into the anti-stats next. And this was really just looking at the average score and average money by ante. And as you can see, the scores keep going up and up on average by ante, which makes total sense. You scale jokers, you get planet cards to get higher scores, and so that does make a lot of sense. And for the most part, our money starts going up and up. And because for the most part, I try and zero out my money before the ante 8 boss blind, that will go down a little bit. And on the couple that we went into endless, we did keep some money in our pocket to make sure that we had some money to do some things that we wanted. And last but not least, for what we created already, I fixed last week what we started and then kind of wasn't sure about. And so what I needed to do to make sure that the average time it takes to play a game, or just getting the time it takes to play a game, was working properly is I had to fix my data input. So I originally had, like, this one was, or let's start with this one. It was 6 p.m. Eastern, or 6:01:22 Eastern, and it ended at 7:37:41 Eastern. And I believe it didn't have the seconds on the end, and if it was 6 p.m., it wasn't 06, it was just 6. And because, time is 24 hours, it wasn't super straightforward to be able to parse that. And so I just came in here, highlighted the rows that I wanted. Let me actually highlight the time rows or columns. And you can change your time format. So that's how they were. And I went down to custom date and time and put it in the format that you see up at the top here. 24-hour format with hours, minutes, and seconds. And that made it a lot easier to bring in. However, I still had to parse my time. Hi, Cats. Thank you so much for coming. And I do have to give you a big shout out. You got your first and second win in Balatro. So, everyone, please give Cats a congratulations. That is fantastic. So excited for you. I hope that you picked up some tips and tricks from these streams, and if not, that's cool too. As long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. So excited for you. 5 wins now. Holy cow, that's awesome. Congrats. I think you've now tied what I've streamed. So that's awesome. Now, if we want to actually work with our time, I did have to use parse time, so it would basically know how to read time in SQL. And so you wrap parse time with the format, so it's really just hours, minutes, and seconds with percentage signs before each of those, and then put what timestamp column you want to use. And if you're doing a time diff to subtract, you always want to put your later timestamp first and then your earlier timestamp. And in your time diff, you have to give it the basically units you want it to output. And so I did it both with hours and minutes. And so this is right now by run ID. And so for our 8 games, we can see that our time to play is going down a bunch, except in game 6, where I believe that was, let's see, game 6 was yellow deck, white stake. And our game 7, where we lost, that actually took the shortest because we didn't go as far as other places. And besides that one, our latest game on Thursday was actually pretty short too because we started skipping a lot of blinds. And if you wanted to, you can also see, I'm going to take out run ID and get the average for each of these. And you have to aggregate both of those, otherwise it's going to yell at you. And now you can see here my query will actually run. And on average, took about a half hour per game, which doesn't make sense when your game minutes is on average 60 minutes. So I think we might need to check that out. But I think maybe that's something for a different time, a different day. The auto tracker, yes, I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit. I made a little bit of progress. Most of it is on the run info, but we will talk about that in a little bit. I have my VS Code. Is that what it is? Yeah, Visual Studio Code up and ready to show that. I did want to go through a few things in BigQuery first before getting there, but I'm excited about it. It isn't where I can use it for everything yet, but I can probably start using it for at least some of the major run information. Such a developer. That's very kind, Rochelle. Um, I am a business intelligence engineer, and when I do show it, I will be very blunt and say I am just learning Lua. I am not an expert in it, and we will be learning it together. I feel like I was able to hack together some stuff based off of a lot of documentation, but some of it is based off of my understanding of data, so I will say that helped a lot. But it is definitely a learning experience, and I'm glad that I can share it with all of you because it is fun. It's actually not what I expected to do when I started this 2 weeks ago. It's been so long since we started. But I am having a lot of fun because it is definitely interesting to be able to pick up a different coding language. If you can call SQL a coding language, it is a querying language, but literally in the name. But yeah, it is a lot of fun. Probably a lot of frustration too, but that's how you learn. All right. Let's see. We can look at a couple things in the rounds. So I'm going to start with select one because I'm just putting that as a placeholder for now from our BQV round data. And I'm using the BQV prefix because that's what I'm used to for basically cleaned up data. For me, it means BigQuery view. And if I had a table that was cleaned up, I would have BQT. You can. I also use BQTS, BQT stage for raw data coming in, but that's just something that helps me realize what data I'm dealing with. You can obviously name things how you want and make it easier to find, but that's one way that I found that I can get to the information I need quicker. So in our round data, I'm going to bring up the played data views, and I'm going to bring up the round data, and I'm actually going to put it to the right, side by side, and I'm going to scroll over to get back to where we were. And so I want to see what tag, no, we already looked at tag, how many times we've played certain blinds, and how many times we've skipped them. So we have blind name, and actually, instead of doing that, you can actually click over here and it'll put it there nicely for you. And I'm not sure I understand your question, Katz. So we have our blind name, and then we can start by looking at the played column, and we can put in a count star just to get an understanding of how many times this happens. So blind played count. And actually I'm going to change my count star to count 1 because especially once you get into large data sets, it's a lot more efficient. And I'm going to group by all, if I can actually spell. So we'll go ahead and then we'll order by blind plate, or we'll just put in 3 descending. So column 1, 2, 3, and so the highest will be first. And so obviously we played small blinds and big blinds the most, which makes sense. And both for played and skipped. Oh, that's interesting. At the top in VS, in Visual Studio and Unity, you need using Unity Editor. Interesting. Thankfully, BigQuery, which is what we're using right now, you just need to type in your query, which is select from where in the most basic form. And I think in Lua, you don't need something like that. I think you just need to make sure that you have the right things installed. So we can see we played small blinds, big blinds the most, and I'm actually going to remove those because I really don't care right now how many times we played those. It's going to kind of skew our data set. And so where our blind name I'm going to do is not in, because we have more than one that we want to exclude. Small blind and big blind. So we only want to see our boss blinds that are showing up the most to see kind of how that's happening. So we've had the club and the window show up the most, and the least we've had the serpent, the water, amber acorn, the arm, the pillar, and violet vessel. And I'll have to check how many blinds there actually are. if there are even some that aren't on this list. But we can see how many times we played them and how many times we were defeated by them. We can't skip boss blinds. So this is really starting to help us understand the data, the structure, and how it's working. So because of that, I'm going to take played out. I'm going to take this out so it doesn't yell at me for a second. And I'm going to do an if statement again. So if, actually we're going to have to do a case because there are 3 different options for whether we played or not. So case when our played column equals yes, then we'll do then 1. And for this, we'll just do else 0. And we'll end that as played blind. And I'm going to sum this up to get the number of times we played per blind name. I'm also going to do the same thing. Probably could have used an if statement then as well, but I wanted to make sure to separate out what I'm looking at. So this one would be no skipped blind, and then need to make sure that I get my wording correct for defeated before, because when you're doing equals to a string, you have to have the text exactly the same, otherwise it won't find it. So we'll put no defeated prior to blind in there, and then count 1 as total times played. And we'll take this out and see how this looks. So we have a green check. This query is valid. And so we can kind of see it almost pivoted. I know there is a pivot in SQL, but I wanted to kind of show a different way of doing that. And so you can see small blind, we've played 67 times, or sorry, yeah, we've played total 67 times, or they've shown up 67 times. We've played 45 of them. We've skipped 22 of them, and we were not defeated by a small blind. However, we were defeated twice by big blinds, and or not necessarily. That means it doesn't mean that we were defeated by them. It means that we didn't get to play them. So actually, that means that we did lose 2 times in our small blinds. And then we can see our other blind names down here, which ones we may have been defeated by. So the water and the arm. Or no, this was, we didn't get to play them because we were already defeated. We've only lost twice, so that means those were ones that we just didn't get to play, and that's okay. So this can help us start tracking some of the how often blinds show up. We can even potentially look at, let's actually do something crazy. This was just a thought I had, so hopefully it pans out. So remember last time how we were talking about joins? We have, I'm going to alias this is R1. We're going to cross join. R2. We're going to join itself. And what a cross join does is it basically duplicates everything within there. And so for every single water, let's do for every single the wall that's in our list, every single round that showed up as an option in the same run, you'll have a different row for each of those. Okay, thank you so much for joining. And so you create that duplication, but you can start to see what boss blinds in particular show up in the same runs together the most frequently. So I'm going to do a little bit of work to make sure we're just limited to the boss blinds. So where in our round 1 table, our blind name is not in small blind or big blind. Make sure to wrap those in strings and do the same thing with an and, except we'll change this to R2, not R2D2, just R2. And let's see, we also, let's limit this to run ID equals 1 to just see what the first one looks at like, so we don't have a ton of data, to make sure that we're doing this properly. And we do have to do r1.run and r2.run. And that's why I was getting an error message. It said, I don't know which run ID you actually are looking at. So I don't know which one to potentially find. And then let's see, we'll look at, so we have R1 blind name, R2 blind name, R2 dot blind name, and then count star. And since we're only looking at one run, it should populate just the blinds that we're looking at. And so you can see, because the mouth came up, we're creating one row for every single other blind that came up. You can also see we have the mouth. So because it's in both, it's joining to itself. And so let's add in and r1 dot blind name does not equal to r2 dot blind name, because we don't care that it's in the same run as itself, because it only shows up once, and so it's not technically showing up more than in the same blind as itself. And so now the mark is first, and you can see that there is no other the mark in there, and our row count went from 49 to 42. So this was a little bit of good validation to do before we looked at the entire data set, because sometimes it's overwhelming to have all your data come back at once and you can't see things that would be caveats or things that show up. So I'm going to take out the run ID equals 1, and I'm going to say as something like blind coexist, so they happen in the same, and we're going to order by 3 descending. And there is something else that's going to pop up, but we'll see how that looks when we get there. So the club and the window have shown up in the same, we haven't played 25, so that means that we need to do a little bit more work. And so I'm actually gonna go to the window, the club, and the window. And you can see that in run 1, the club just showed up. Oh, I know why. Yeah, this is why you validate and make sure that things make logical sense. I was like, we haven't played 25 times. That just means that every time that they've ever popped up, it'll say that they coexist, which is not accurate. So we also need to say, and our run ID, or yeah, run ID in round in our round one table is the same as our run ID in our second iteration. So that way it'll only bring up the ones that are in the same run. I knew I was missing something. Hey, Default, thank you so much for raiding again. I really appreciate you being here. We are currently looking at how many times the same boss blinds showed up in the same run. So there's a bunch that each showed up 3 times together. Like we have the goad and the mouth, which you see both the goad first and then the mouth and then the mouth and then the goad. And so we could probably put in something where we look at basically the alphabetical order of those two to only bring back one row for the two of those. Let's not get into that today, but that is something that you can do to be fun. We have a bunch of other ones like the window and the eye, and I was hoping we'd find the window and the wall together to make a funny joke, but I've made that a few times when streaming, but they haven't come up consecutive. Otherwise, that would be even more fun. From the window to the wall, exactly. Gotta find little pockets of joy in these things. All right, so that is pretty much where we're going with this. And so we looked at the big blind combos, the antes with the most skips, which, or no, we looked at the blinds with the most skips, which small blinds had one more than big blinds. We could look at the antes with the most skips. And so we would just take this one, and instead of blind name, we put ante ID, and we'd want to do where our blind name is in, so there's at least one or more options. So our small blind and our big blind. And so we can see, I'm going to order this by ante ID instead of by how many times we played or how many times we skipped. And so you can see we've actually skipped about half of our either small or big blinds within ante 1, which is pretty interesting. We skip 50% of the time in ante 1 and ante 2. We skip a lot less later down the road. In non-endless mode, ante 8 is where we've skipped the least. And obviously, we've only played a few times in endless, and so those will show up a little bit different too. Let me take a sip of water. All right. I was going to maybe get into a little bit more complex SQL, but I do think that I am going to switch to show the mod that I've been working on. And for those of you who haven't been in this stream before or who don't know, I am trying to take all of this that I'm capturing in here and create a mod where it exports into a CSV so that I don't have to do a lot of this work myself. I always love the phrase work smarter, not harder. try to automate everything I can. And so I have seen a little bit of success, and I wanted to show that to you all today. And as a quick note, I'm calling it Jimbo's data, and it is currently in my GitHub. And if you look at my links on YouTube or in my Twitch profile, there's either a direct link to GitHub where you can see not only the mod in there, but also the queries that we've been working on for Balatro and some of the napkins or the building blocks for the queries. But I do have at least the bare bones of Jimbo's data in here. So I'm going to switch over to VS Code and show you what it looks like. The first thing you need to do if you've ever worked with a mod is you have to have some way of identifying whose mod it is and what it's built for. And so that's why in the manifest.json or JSON, we have Jimbo's data as version 0.1 because it's still in development. We're tracking Balatro data one nope at a time and some other more administrative stuff for it. We have our init file, which basically calls the smods package and looks for our Jimbo's data.lua and loads it. And so once we get into here, it basically, this is some administrative stuff up here, but I'm creating, you can see over here, different folders and then files in CSVs that are appended with the year month, just because once we get to a point where I'm tracking a ton of games, I want to make sure that my CSVs don't get too overloaded. Probably could be safe with maybe like a year, but this way we can be super safe. And you'll notice that it saves it out to the Jimbo's data logs, and it's going to be /test, which is the name of the profile I set up. So if I wanted to run this on NapKim Math, it would have /NapKim Math instead. I've just been cranking away at losses in a test profile so I don't kill my NapKim Math stats. This portion gets that profile name, and so because I'll also show how this works in Balatro itself, but it'll populate the profile name that you're playing on. So if you have multiple different profiles, you can see the difference between them as well. You can get some basic run info when you start the game. And I had to separate out the start game and the end game because I didn't want to modify anything that I was writing, and it was important so that we could track basically how long these games take, that we get the start time and the end time as well, and that's why part of it is also separated out into our run start and our run end. So we can get the seed, which does populate as soon as you start the game, so you can look at it as soon as you start the game. You don't have to wait till the end screen to populate it. We have our stake name, our profile name, and then our deck name. And then the same thing for at the end of the game. Right now, this is when there's actually a game over. I'm still trying to figure out how to get the, basically if you win the game but don't go into endless mode, saving these off, or if you like save the game and come back to it later. I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet, but that's okay. So we got our defeated by, so that tells you which boss blind or smaller big blind defeated you, how many cards you played, how many you discarded, how many you purchased, how many times you re-rolled, your new collection, the furthest ante you got, your furthest round, and your best hand. I'm still working out the most played hand and most played hand number of times, but I plan to have those in there as well. How many dollars you had at the end of the game, if you won the game or not, and then this is where it actually returns who you're defeated by. So we have a function up here to make sure that we have a directory within our mods/Jimbo's data, just to make sure we can get to it. And this will actually save it outside of the Jimbo's data folder. It'll save it directly in your mods folder, similar to how Lovely saves the logs directly in your mods folder. And that way, if there are any updates or anything, you can get pulled directly and don't have to worry about overwriting the data that you've already saved. And so this just makes sure that for all of our different CSVs that we're writing, that the correct profile and dataset name is set up correctly. Then we get into writing our run start CSV, where we just basically make sure that we have the file structure we need, including the headers, and then we export out our profile, seed, stake, deck, and our OS date is just the timestamp that you start the game. And so if it needs a header, it writes out the header and then inserts the row. Otherwise, it just inserts the row. Now, one thing that I did notice that while I was doing this is if you put in new columns, then it'll overwrite the existing data. So you need to be super careful as you're doing this that you don't overwrite data that you actually want. But if you do take some columns out, so like when I was not putting those in, when I commented those out, it actually still kept the header because it's just looking for the header that you're saying, and even if it's a subset, it'll still export to that. So another thing to be careful with. And same thing with the end run, where we say look for the header, put the format necessary. These are all strings, just to be simple. And you have one for every single row you're exporting, or one for every column you're exporting. And then /n means that there's a new line at the end of it, to make it so you don't have a CSV that just has so many columns instead of one row for every game. And the same thing where we're putting in our header if it doesn't exist and appending if it does. Then this is where we actually hook into some of the game functions. Our start run is what we hook into for the start of the game. And we're triggering it right after the game starts. We're writing it to the CSV, and so we're saving that into that folder right here. And then same thing with the game over. When the game ends, we're going to do the same thing where as soon as the game ends, we're going to write to that file. And for those of you who have not run a Balatro mod before, what you do is you make sure that it's in your mods folder, which for me is in Library Application Support Balatro. It differs by operating system. And you put these lovely library and .sh files directly with your Balatro app. And that's, for me, in Library Application Support, Steam, Steam Apps, and Common. And the easiest way I found to do this is if you take your lovely macros.sh and you drag it. I think I cut out my toolbar at the bottom, but if you drag it on top of your terminal icon and drop it there, it will start the game for you. And you see, because we are using mods, Steam Modded is up at the top. You can click and it'll tell you which mods you are using. If you click off, it will reset Balatro and you have to open it up again and click back on. Thank you so much, Default. It is a big learning experience for me, but I'm trying to make it much easier on myself to be able to track a lot of these. So I am in my testing profile. I don't want to accidentally mess up my NapKim math profile. And I'll hit play. I haven't won one on this because I've just been testing. So I'm going to be opening up my red deck. We'll start with our first blind. And actually, before we get into it, I'm going to, there we go. I'm going to go back to our VS Code for a second because I can open up our CSVs in here. And so we just started this, our red deck white stake. We started it. It is basically, for me, 6 hours ahead, I think. So it's saying, or no, sorry, I need to 4 hours ahead because this is not in, it's 24 hours, not 12 hours. But it tells you your seed, so you can use something like the soul to look at your seed information if you want. I'm not condoning that, but if that is something that would be cool to you, you can see before you even start the game how it's going to look, your white stake, your red deck, and then your start timestamp. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to try to win our small blind and then lose our next. Okay, there we go. Full house. Could have played with the aces too, but that'll get us 360 is our round score. And I'm going to buy Hanged Man. So we have $7 left. Start our big blind. And we'll just play high cards. I'm going to discard a couple things. Play another high card, and lose. Womp womp. All right, so our best hand is 360, and we'll switch over. We played 9 cards, 12 discards, purchased 1, rerolled 0 times, 1 new discovery, have our seed, ante 1, round 2, defeated by a big blind. And if we go into our run end, we have the same metadata to start our CSV for run start. We have our profile, our seed, our stake, our deck, and then we have our end timestamp. So we ended right at like 3:02 p.m. my time. False, we did not win. That's okay. We were not. 360 is our best hand. We played 9 cards, discarded 12. 9, 12. And then we have 101. Let's see if I can actually switch back. There we go. 9, 12. And then 1 purchased, 0 rerolls, 1 new collection. We made it to our furthest ante was 1, furthest round was 2. We did have $7 left over, and we lost to the big blind. Thank you. This will be so cool when it's available to peeps. Yes. So it is available right now in its current state. Obviously, it's just the run start and run end, but I am going to be actively working as I can. I don't expect it to be done this week, next week, in the near future, but I expect to be iterating on it to hopefully get something usable for anyone sometime soon, or maybe not so soon. We'll see how long it takes since I am not a Lua developer. But feel free to go into the GitLab that I have linked in a couple places. You can download it and try it out yourself if you want. Just make sure that you have Lovely and Steam modded. Thank you so much, Rochelle. And just make sure that it's in your mods folder with the folder name of Jimbo's data. That way it'll work properly. I haven't tested it out on a non-Mac computer, so just make sure that you realize that I did as much as I could to make sure it was operating system agnostic, but I do know that there are differences even with Windows and like Linux. Um, so yeah, if you try it out, let me know. Let me know what you think. I am trying to get a lot of the same format that I have in here, either same format or same concept, so that I can track everything I want to track. Um, I may have a couple different iterations to get to that. So, like, I might have the shop information first or the hand information first and figure out if I can actually get to some of that. Thank you so much. I would love for you to test it out. Let me know what you think. Um, and if there are any bugs or anything weird popping up, that's very good for me to know, especially if you have a different operating system. Because, yeah, I love enabling people with data and being able to make data driven decisions because I am a nerd, as I've said many times before. And so, um, first iteration is me creating this mod to actually export the data. I was trying to build it out in a SQLite database, but I realized the barrier to entry for that for non-data people was probably high. And so CSVs you can use in any type of data set you want. You can even bring it into Google Sheets and just make some basic charts there. But I would love to eventually tie this into either like Tableau or some type of visualization where you can see trends over time or build something out where it would be easier for other people who might not be as data savvy to figure stuff out. Another option is even something like Google Colab. If you haven't used that before, it's very similar to Jupyter Notebook, where you can run Python code. It saves the code, and it basically every time you run it, it saves the output underneath a cell you run in. And so something like that could be super low barrier to entry as well. You don't have to have anything installed on your computer to use that, besides having the CSVs saved somewhere. So I'm thinking about a couple different options. And like round 3, maybe if I ever get there, will be some type of predictive something. I don't know if I'll get there, but it would be really cool to do. Like mid-run, what's happening? What data do you already have? What does it think that you should do? Should you like switch to a different poker hand, or should you look out for certain jokers? Thank you, Default. I appreciate that. I haven't done a ton in predictive analytics, but it's something that I'm always interested in and I'm always interested to learn. And so I do think something like that could be really cool. Um, but first step is going to be getting the data in the right format to actually use and prevent me from having to spend hours every week manually tracking. Yes. Recommending someone to raid. Absolutely. Yeah, we are just about wrapped up. And I've actually never done a raid before, so I might need some help um, figuring out how to do that. I actually looked it up this morning and I had an idea of how to do it because I use OBS to stream and I use Restream. But would love that. I do think we are at the point where we can wrap up for the day. And I really appreciate you all being here, um, asking questions, um, giving me some banter, and appreciate the encouragement of this crazy project of mine. I hope that you'll join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern for Balatro, and on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern for some data. Thank you so much. Intelligate. Oh, perfect. All right, I'm going to switch over to my end screen, and I believe I figured out how to raid. And so I'm going to click on the raid channel. All right. Start raid. All right, I'll see you all next time. Thank you.